There we go. So hi, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight for this open house for 262 Armstrong Street, which has a zoning bylaw amendment and a site plan control in at the city right now. Since we're a smaller group tonight, I'll change sort of our usual sort of process. So we won't be relying on the Q&A for questions. Just either feel free to raise your hand or to put your question in the chat if you're more comfortable with that. This meeting is being recorded right now, so if anyone doesn't feel comfortable showing their face but would still like to speak, feel free, to turn off your video in the bottom left hand of your screen, and you can do that and ask the question. And otherwise, if you would prefer, not to speak at all, then the chat's right there as your option. So this presentation will be recorded and posted on our YouTube by the end of the week, probably sooner than that. But if you know anyone who is interested in attending this meeting but couldn't make it, and who might be interested in some of the questions and answers that we got coming out of it, please feel free to write our office, jeff.leeper@ottawa.ca. I'll put it in the chat, but I'm sure everyone's familiar. And you can ask for the video there. If you'd rather be a bit more direct and go look for it yourself, you just need to look up Kijisipi Ward on YouTube, and you'll be able to find it fairly quickly in the posted videos. So to go over the format of this meeting, which I'm sure a number of you are already familiar with. So we'll start with a short presentation from the applicant, and they'll kind of give us a good overview of the plans we have in today. After that presentation, we'll dive into the question and answer period as long as it needs to go. We also have the planner on the file, Nadir Kadri, with us today, who can outline any of the timelines that the city is going through, any of the city policies on the zoning and the site plan, and generally just guide us through any sort of more city-specific questions that might come up tonight. So I won't take too much more time in doing our housekeeping. I think it'll be pretty straightforward, and I'm sure many of you are good with it already. So I'm going to hand over the presentation to Paul Cooper, who's going to lead us through it until we dive into the Q&A. So over to you, Paul. I think you might be muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Steph. We appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak with Councillor Leiper's office today and other interested parties within the community. So I'm here on behalf of my clients, Mr. Lance Lunetta and his wife, Lisa Fudge Lunetta. They are the owners at 262 Armstrong Avenue, have owned that property for many years, and their future retirement plans depend on developing that property. So they will be the residents of the uppermost unit. And so it's a building located in the MC16 zone, so mixed commercial center zone. The proposed use is consistent with what's permitted within the bylaw. It's important to underline the fact that the proposed lot area is significantly smaller than a typical lot within this area. And ultimately, that reflects the need for relief from the zoning bylaw, which we are seeking. So as part of this application, we are going through a minor zoning bylaw amendment for we're asking for relief from two provisions. One being, we're asking for a reduction of the rear yard setback from the required 3 meters to 0. And then we're also asking for relief from the step back of the third or the fourth story of the building to be 2.67 meters as opposed to the 7.5 meters, which is required by the bylaw. And those are the only two pieces of relief that are being sought in this application, which is, I think, reasonably good considering, again, the compact nature of the lot. If I can maybe share my screen, I'll give a brief presentation. I know that some individuals here today have had an opportunity to familiarize themselves a bit with this application, because we've had several pre-consultations with the city as part of our due diligence process. And in that time, we met with the community group and with the planner early days, Sienna Turkington, on multiple occasions for pre-consultation in order to discuss the merits of the application. So here's the zoning context map. Like I mentioned, this is the lot proper is zoned MC16. It's not terribly clear in the image, but it's dead center on the page, and it's a very small parcel. Here's an aerial view, which makes it more apparent for those that know the neighborhood. We're on Armstrong, and we're facing sort of that large office commercial kind of 2-story and 1-story building. So the streetscape character is unique in this area, in that it's extremely varied. We have all sorts of different uses and intensity of uses, from the existing duplex building that's on our site. We have a neighboring building to the east, which is a 3-unit building, and we have some larger multiple unit buildings that are being constructed on the surrounding streets. So this is an area that's undergoing some significant change. There's a view of the pretty imposing building which faces the subject property. And here are some other contextual images of smaller existing residential forms in the area, which are in the process of being developed. I believe there's an application in for the neighboring property. This is showing an image of 260 Armstrong, and it's also in for site plan approval, I believe, at this time. I don't know much about the status of the application, but I do believe that it's in for a site plan application. Here's the building at the corner, which fronts onto Armstrong.
Paul, if I can interrupt for a sec,
Yep.
would you mind expanding the screen to full screen, possibly?
Yeah, sure.
Just so everyone can get a better look at some of the pages.
Yes, sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. Thanks.
There we go. Is that better?
I think that should be better.
Excellent. So here we come to the actual footprint, the site plan of the proposed development. And of course, we're asking for that rear yard setback of 0, and we're abutting the rear yard of another property. And there's an exterior access stair, which reduces the amount of building which actually abuts that property, but it is a permitted projection, which is allowed within the bylaw. It's important to note that during the design process and the early consultations with the local community groups, that the original design called for a front yard setback of 0. And since some early discussions and concerns were addressed by being able to provide that 2-meter front yard setback, we also had an enclosed garage. We were also able, through that process, to see that there were concerns about sight lines from this garage. So we still provide a single parking space, but that parking space is now in the form of a carport. And so it's more open air and doesn't represent the same kind of concerns, or hopefully alleviate some of the concerns with respect to sight lines for that single parking space. So again, for a 4-story, 4-unit building, we're providing a single parking space because that was absolutely essential to the owners. Going forward, it was something that was really critical to them. We're permitted to provide parking within the bylaw, but we're not required to provide parking because we're in Area X. And within Area X, we're permitted to provide 0 on-site parking. Here, we're providing a single parking space. The gross floor area of the building is in the order of 4,500 square feet. We're within close proximity to rapid transit. So the LRT lines, there are many bus lines in this area. So it's really focused on public transit, being accessible by public transit. The proposed design is highly consistent in terms of the intensity and the use of the lands as it relates to the existing official plan of the City of Ottawa, as well as the new official plan, which has been adopted. In terms of this property exists within a transect, one of the 15-minute communities. And the kind of building form and intensity that's being called for in those areas is exactly what we are proposing. So now to get down on the ground and get a little bit of a sense of the context and how the proposed building fits into that context, we have a couple of three-dimensional street views here. This showing the front entrance of the building, which is pushed back from the street to provide a more open and generous public realm or public right-of-way, or a feeling of openness. Again, the parking space occurs as a cantilevered kind of parking space, carport type parking space. We move now down to the east end of Armstrong, and we look back past 260 Armstrong, and 262 is, although taller, it's consistent in height, and in fact 260 is being developed for a taller building. It's important to note that the proposed building that we're proposing at 262 is significantly shorter than we would be permitted to build. We're permitted to build a 20-meter tall structure, which would essentially equate to 2 additional stories. Given the compact nature of the building, building 2 additional stories did not make sense, because you end up with such little floor area that it was not viable. Again, this speaks to the fact of the significantly smaller lot area, which ultimately has driven the need for requesting relief from the rear yard setback in order to make the building tenable for the owners, to make it meaningful in terms of development. Otherwise, the floor area would have been so small that it would have not been usable. So if we, I want to get into the fine points again, this touching on some of the elements relating to the official plan. We're confident that the building is appropriate. We feel that although we are asking for some relief, that the relief that we're requesting is not major, and it is something that can be that's justifiable given the compact nature of the lot. That the development is consistent with the official plan, as well as with the intent of the zoning bylaw, and that essentially it's desirable to intensify and meet the objectives of the City of Ottawa in terms of its goals to create a more dense and more vital, more densely populated area, where we're going from a density of about 3 to 4 people to up to 8 people. Again, we're within lots of great public transportation. We're in a transect which will support mixed use living. And so for those reasons, we feel that it's an appropriate application that will contribute positively to the built landscape of the City of Ottawa.
Thank you, Paul, for the presentation. With that, actually, I think what we'll do, Nadir, if you don't mind, would you walk us through kind of what the timelines and kind of process for the zoning kind of bylaw amendment application and the site plan control we have in is right now? I think it just might be good to get a sense of it. And I know you offered, so.
That's okay. No, I'm happy to. Is it okay if I share my screen really quickly?
Yeah, just give me 1 sec. I'll just make sure you're able to. Okay, you should be good. Thanks.
Okay, just 1 second here. Can everyone see the slide with the planning process image on it?
I can see it.
Okay, perfect. Yep. So ultimately, at the end of the day, this is the proposal that the applicant has submitted to staff. Through the planning process for a rezoning, we take in the submissions, we review the submissions, we deem them complete or incomplete. This submission in particular has been deemed complete. So it's been circulated to various departments and agencies for comment. We're still within the initial commenting period. So we're actually, in this particular case, at step 7 when it comes to this particular diagram, where we're having this community information session just to give the members of the public some additional information on the application. Following this meeting, there's, and actually all throughout this process, not just within the first sort of circulation period, I'm taking in comments from the public on the application as it stands today and as it's updated through the rezoning process. As Steph mentioned, because there are two planning processes that are running concurrent, the rezoning might advance in advance of the site plan process. If staff are in a position to make a recommendation to council on the actual built form. And what that really boils down to is the sort of changes that Paul's run the community through in terms of the relief sought from the applicable bylaw provisions. So with respect to the rear yard setback and with respect to the step back that's required at the fourth level at the rear. And so once that report goes to council, council then makes a decision on the application. The application or that decision is then not final until following the appeal period, which is typically 30 days. Applications can be appealed by the applicant or by members of the public to the Ontario Land Tribunal. And that happens in some particular cases, but usually on applications that are very contentious. But what will end up happening through this process is once the zoning is in full force and effect, then staff can advance with the site plan application. Typically, the site plan application deals with technical matters in terms of how the building's going to be serviced, what the building's going to look like from a materiality perspective, how that interacts with the public realm, the landscaping that's along the street, and those types of details through that process. Steph, was there anything else that you wanted me to cover at this stage?
No, I think that's great. Actually, I was just going to say for the end, having your contact slide there will be probably very useful for everyone. So we can pop it up right now.
Yeah.
But I think with that, I think we're good to go. I see Cheryl has raised her hand, so we'll dive into the Q&A. And Cheryl, if you want to start us off.
Well, actually, I had a question just on the site plan. So will site plan be required?
Yes.
But under the new rules, is it required as of July 1st?
So site plan is a requirement at the moment. The rules are changing, as you've made aware at this point in time. The site plan process is in, but we'll take that back and we'll take a closer look at it with the applicant to determine whether or not it's actually needed to advance. But for now, the site plan is in, it's being reviewed concurrently with the rezoning application that's in with the city.
Okay, so what are the rules on that, or you could let me know later. I don't want to hold up the meeting, but I'm interested in how you're applying that, but I could get that later.
Yeah,
if I would just sort of a follow-up question. Normally when rules change, but this may not be normal, applications that come in under one regime are handled by the rules of that regime, and any applications that are made, for example, after July 1st will have to be treated under the new rules instituted by, I think it's Bill 109. Anyway, I just sort of throw that into the mill. We'll await further instructions. Well, we will be commenting no matter what, because we have seen the site plan, and that goes for 260 Armstrong as well, for which we were not consulted, but we found the information and are intending to comment. That's not your file though.
It's not my file, but a rezoning process is a public process, regardless of what happens with the site plan process through Bill 109. So it's totally appropriate for anyone or everyone to comment through that process.
260 though is a site plan only application, and but to say you're not responsible for that. Actually, can I ask Steph, or ask? I would like to ask anyone the community association members, and probably Paul, if you wouldn't mind, after this is over, if we could have keep the meeting going a little bit longer to have a quick discussion of 260 Armstrong, which of course is right next door, and somewhat related, given that, you know, we've got 0 lot lines here. So it's basically a request if you could just keep the meeting going, but I won't say anything more about it until then.
Sounds good. I can absolutely keep the meeting going, and I'll stop recording for everyone at that point too. But yeah, we can leave those questions on sort of the changes till the end, though, as we've understood, this has come in before, so it's subject to those old rules. But I will defer to whatever Nadir can dig up either later or after this meeting. So jumping into the questions for this site plan, I'll leave the floor open for a moment, but like I said, you know, feel free just to raise your hand if you'd like to speak directly. And if you prefer, just write any questions you might have into the chat and I'll read them aloud for everyone that way. So I'll jump back to Cheryl if you want to go.
Sure. So I have a question about the garbage. So it appears it's in the basement. So how does it come up? Do you have to bump all those containers up the stairs to get it out? And will it then sit in the driveway? And is there room? Because it's important that containers not sit on the street, which we've seen with one development blocking actually a lane of traffic. So how do you get the garbage out of the basement?
I'll take that one, Paul.
Sure.
You're looking at the garbage man for the for that property. Yeah. So one of the advantages of us being owners and on site is we will be able to look after the property and address all these little you know, these daily chores and weekly chores. But it will be the owners ourselves taking the garbage out every week, bringing the cans back in into the designated garbage area. One of the things that you look at on the plan is we do have full intentions in the future of installing an elevator to service this entire property. And that serves multiple purposes. The main one being that we want to eventually make this property fully accessible. And that will also help with, you know, when that's eventually done, it will also assist in us bringing the garbage out and bringing it back in and that sort of stuff. But for now, until that's done, it will be the owner's responsibility. We'll bring that out and make sure that's taken out on a weekly basis and brought back in accordingly.
Okay. And large items you would just store in the carport, I'm assuming? So if you have a tenant that moves out and you've got a mattress, it would be stored in the carport?
Well, large items are going to have to be a case by case situation type thing. I mean, normally if I have a tenant that is moving out and they're going to be responsible for bringing and disposing of their own garbage or their own old mattresses or furniture or anything like that. Again, we're going to be on site. So if worse comes to worse, we won't let things sit around too long. We'll take it to the dump ourselves. But yes, in the meantime, if there's a larger item that maybe needs to be stored in the carport area until garbage day, we will do that, but we will make arrangements sort of on a case by case basis, depending upon what it is that we're dealing with, you know.
Okay. And just if I could just ask one more question, and then I have more, but I'll let other people get in there. So just in terms of the water drainage, are there roof drains? And then also some of those canopies, like some of the roofs I could see are flat. Some of the roofs or canopies have a slope. And I remember this question was asked before. So where does that water go? Will it slope inwards towards the building so it doesn't slope outwards towards the street and the neighbors?
Right. So that absolutely, I'll let Paul address that as well, but we absolutely have a roof plan and a water drainage plan. That was part of our geotechnical survey and part of the reports that we had to come up with. But absolutely, all the canopies are accounted for in terms of drainage. The roof drain, there's if you look in the architectural drawings, there's actually a roof drain plan involved in there. But I can pass that over to Paul because he'll be better able to explain it than I will.
Sure. Thank you, Lance. Yeah, so it's ultimately the building will be drained internally, and it's all been designed and coordinated with a professional civil structural engineer, and that was all part of the necessary submission for site plan control. So all that work has been done, and ultimately the objective is to control and maintain the water on the subject property and make sure it doesn't drain onto neighboring properties, or in cases where it's possible that it be brought out to the street. So all of that has been designed with the assistance of a civil engineer. So it's all been done to the city's satisfaction. And if not, then that will be addressed during the site plan control process. So they're all within the normal city standards. In terms of ice and snow coming off of those upper sloped roofs, I understand the nature of the comment, because I believe there were some issues or concerns with the similar sloped canopies at Parkdale Park. So that really formed the inspiration in part for the canopies on our project, was taking inspiration from that local context and the local vernacular. And so we'll take necessary measures to make sure that the building is safe to both the inhabitants and pedestrians, and we'll do all of the necessary work to ensure that the site remains a safe place for everyone.
So do you have storage on the roof then for the, whatever it is, the 100-year rain event? I've seen that in some other reports, actually 260 Armstrong. So it's got the 150 millimeter
Ponding.
ponding?
Yep. Yeah. All of those requirements, whatever the city standards are, would have been incorporated into our design. And so, yeah, then you would have roof drains with the flow limiters, which then allow the water to be slowly released into the municipal storm service. So yeah, all of those details are carefully coordinated and form part of the submission, which is already in at the City of Ottawa presently.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. So I'll open the floor a bit more just to see if any other questions come in as everyone lets them percolate. Wanda and Linda, I see your hands up. So Wanda, if you'd like to go first.
Sure. I've attended a few meetings about this building, and I think I've been really clear that I really dislike the fact that the front and rear setbacks have been eliminated. Not eliminated entirely in the front, but when you did the preamble discussing this project, one of the things you said was that the front yard meets its 2 meter setback, but when I looked at the the site plan, I think it's 5 feet 4 inches, isn't it? Not 2 meters. That the front yard setback is only 5 feet 4 inches, or is there something I missed?
It's 2 meters, so I'm not sure where you saw 5 feet. It may have been another dimension, but we are respecting the front yard setback, and that was a result of, hearing your concerns in the original consultations. And so, and in terms of, responding to the significant concern about the rear yard setback, I was never under the impression that the rear yard setback reduction was of a significant concern. It was something that we did discuss, but it was not presented as being of a significant concern. Again, given the compact nature of this site, I think it's so important to understand, if you're trying to develop something that's 60% the size of a standard lot, but you're using the same rules that everybody else uses, how is it possible to develop that without requiring some relief? It's not possible. And so we've had to ask for relief, and where we've asked for it, it's not inconsistent with the existing footprint of the building. In fact, the existing building is set back only maybe 1.5 feet from the rear property line. We're asking for, of course, a reduction of that, but it's not like we're asking for, and we're not talking about the full width of the building at that setback. We're talking about 50% of the building at that setback, which is again consistent with the existing building as it sits today, although arguably it's a shorter form.
Okay, the existing building as it sits today goes to the rear property line or close to it.
It does.
But you have a driveway that runs the entire west side of that property, which is about 8 or 10 feet wide. So what you're doing is it's a bit disingenuous to say you're kind of building on the same footprint, because the building is much smaller as it sits there right now because of that big driveway. But at any rate, okay, so if you're saying it's 2 meters, so that 2 meters does give enough of a sight line, because where I saw the 5 feet 4 inch setback was on the site plan, but it's really hard to read because the permeable pavers are all kind of gridded into that area, and trying to pull the measurements off the site plan was really difficult. So I guess there was another place where it said 2 meters. And 2 meters is enough then to give you a sight line to the east if you're pulling out of that carport? That's a question, actually.
I would say yes, it is.
Okay.
It's
I
not
went out and
generous, but
measured-
it conforms with the we're not asking for any relief as it relates to the front or relationship of the building to the front yard.
No, and the relief part would be part of it, but the carport, if it doesn't have good enough sight lines to the east, if a car is already on the sidewalk before the driver can see the sidewalk, that to me is a big problem. So like I say, I read 5 feet 4 inches off the site plan on the front where it's all the permeable pavers are all kind of gridlocked on it. And I went out and measured my small car, and 5 feet 4 inches from the front of my car takes me to the dash. It doesn't take me to the steering wheel. It just takes me partway through the dash, and I drive a compact. So I 2 meters may give a car enough sight to see, but I'm not really sure it does. So yes, you're meeting the bylaw for the 2 meters, but if it's not enough to give a sight line of the driveway, that's of the city sidewalk, that's really not acceptable on any level.
Well, we fully feel that that is plenty of space and plenty of sight line that we're providing to ourselves. And again, we are in compliance with the bylaw.
Yes, I heard that.
It's a 2 meter setback, and there are the existing building as it stands now has essentially a 0 sight line.
And just to go back to the last meeting, Wanda, where you mentioned with our plan that you had concerns about sight line. As a result of your comments, which were very helpful, thank you. We completely redesigned that area to make it a carport instead of a garage for the full purpose of addressing that comment. So I think we listened to you and your comments and took them to heart and did a complete redesign.
No, and
I just can I interject for one quick second? I know through the submission materials, you've also provided a transportation impact assessment. I'm wondering whether or not the transportation consultant that you've retained speaks specifically to this particular matter, and if you're able to just make some reference to that report.
Thank you, Nadir. We did not actually consult with a transportation expert. It was such a straightforward application as it related to the transportation analysis. So we did not consult with an expert in transportation or parking. I mean, at 2 meters setback, I don't think there are many vehicles that have 2 meters from the bumper to where you'd be able to see reasonably out of the window in order to ascertain whether or not there was a person coming.
Okay, like I say, when I was looking at the site plan today, I didn't see 2 meters. I saw 5 feet 4 inches,
Wanda,
and so I didn't.
It's 6 feet 6 3/4 inches. I'm looking at it now.
Okay, well, I had trouble getting new plans, so I'm not really sure. I was just looking at trying to pull measurements off the site plan. So that's the front. You're saying that's the front yard, and that's fine, and you think that the sight line is going to be fine, and that's okay. I do have to say, and I've said it at every meeting, I disagree that with giving a 0 rear yard, and then the rear yard going up the first 3 stories is 3 meters of relief, and then an additional, what is it, almost 5 meters of relief above that. That's and I understand that this is a small lot. I appreciate that, but I don't think it's fair to ask the community to have every other lot that surrounds it impacted because you bought a small lot. I think that there are other ways of dealing with a small lot, and overbuilding on it is not necessarily a fair thing to do. So I disagree with relief from the rear yard setbacks. I understand that there should be some leeway given, perhaps, but certainly the ground level ones are the ones that the 3 meter absolutely nothing at the rear for the first 3 stories is just, all of the other buildings that are being built in here now, all are set back from the rear, all of them. And they're all set back 3 meters. The property next to you, 260, they have a 0 rear yard actually in that zone for some reason. I don't know how that slipped by, but they're even putting in a rear yard. So like I say, it just strikes me that that's an awfully big ask for any of the properties that are to the south of you.
Well, I can address your comment very quickly in that it's unfortunate. I think there's obviously a miscommunication, because it was never clear that there was a significant concern about the rear yard setback. In fact, if we look back through the notes and correspondence from the previous pre-consultations, there is no reference to those significant concerns. We know that there is obviously some concern because we know we're asking for relief, and those are the only areas that we're asking for any relief from, and we feel that they're not inconsistent with what's happening in other places in the neighborhood. And again, given the compact nature of the site, we were asked to really push the envelope of the building because we're so constrained. And we gave 2 meters, I think, at the front, which was, I think, generous. We also conceded to concerns about the parking. So previously we had a garage, which I know was very important to my clients. They conceded to giving that garage up for a carport, which is definitely much less desirable. So I feel that that a comment is disingenuous, and I think that we're at a place in this process where we've invested significant time and effort to get to where we are, and to be told at this point that there's significant concern about the rear yard setback, which was never the case previously, I think is unfair and is not helpful to the process.
I'm sorry, that is absolutely wrong. At every meeting I have attended, and I think I've attended every one, I have brought that rear yard put at 0. I've brought it up at every meeting. So I'm not sure how you went to this point without understanding that that was an issue, because I have attended all of the meetings to do with this project that I have been informed of, and I have objected to that 0 rear yard setback at everyone. And every property in this block, this area between Armstrong, Wellington, Hinton, and Hamilton, has a rear yard. They all do. If you look at the projects that have been built on Hamilton, the 12 Hamilton and 16 to 20 Hamilton, they all have rear yard setbacks. Everything that's being put in has proper front yard, which 2 meters is what the city needs, and so you've provided that. But they also have rear yards, and I just think that to say that nothing, you didn't hear about this, I'm not sure how you didn't hear me, because I certainly was off mute every time I spoke about it.
Okay, well, we hear your comments.
Thank you.
If you do look at you do look at 12 Hamilton, you do look at 16 to 20 Hamilton, which is being built right now, and you look at 22 Hamilton, those all have 0 rear yard setbacks, as do our properties has a 0 rear yard setback. But I hear your comments, and it's we're at
hold on. I abut 16 to 20 Hamilton. They have a 3 meter rear yard setback, which they have built on. They have built at 3 meters. So don't say they don't have a rear yard setback, because they asked us well.
The point I was going to get to is that we absolutely need this relief in order to redevelop this property. Okay, if we don't have this relief, this property can't be redeveloped. The existing structure will stay as it is for the next 40, 50 years, whatever, however long we're around. This is going to be our, for lack of a better term, this property is going to be our final resting place, whether it's the existing building now that gets renovated, or we're able to redevelop it into something more useful for the community and something more useful for the city. Either way, we need this relief in order to make this project viable. So we hear you. We think we've given significant concession with the front yard setback and the carport and everything else. But in order for this project to go forward, it has to, we have to have the rear yard setback. It just doesn't make, it's not a viable project without it.
Make a
I think I'll just pop in for a second to say, you know, one of the useful aspects of this meeting too is that gathered not just as the neighbors and the applicants, but we're also here. We also have city staff here. This is still relief being asked from the bylaw, and it's coming up now. Wanda raises, you know, a point on whether that relief is merited or not. Obviously, we do have differing opinions here, but ultimately the point of having these meetings early on, and I understand there's been, you know, meetings even prior to this with the community association, with the neighbors, is that we can raise this now, and obviously we'll have to see how it proceeds. We'll have to see, you know, how city staff takes these comments and resolves them. We'll sit with them and resolve them, but just so we don't get too into the weeds, it's not too far down the road to be raising these, especially in the context of, you know, what we're having tonight, which is still a public meeting with everyone sort of here. So Wanda, if it's okay with you for now, I was going to go to Linda for the next question.
Oh, yes, that's fine. I muted myself. I think both of us have said everything we have to say on the issue.
Steph,
Thank you.
I need to take a pass. I'll give up my seat to, or my turn to Cheryl and or Jay, and I have to go and give my cat his insulin shot, but I would like to come back and ask some questions if they don't ask the same question.
Okay, I'll hold your spot till the end in that case, Linda, until you come back. And Nadir.
Yeah, Steph, I just wanted to echo your comments that, you know, we're at the very beginning of this formal process, and while there may have been pre-consultations in the past, it's important to note and recognize that we are at the beginning of this process, that it is a public process, and that, you know, public input is fair, right, at this stage as well. And staff have not yet given their formal comments back to the applicant. You know, we are going to circle back with the rest of the team here at the city, put our heads together, and then put together a comment memo using some of the input that we've received tonight as well, to convey that back to the applicant to inform future resubmission on this file.
Thanks, Nadir. In that case, Jay or Cheryl, I'm not sure which one of you would like to take a go first.
Cheryl, I think you were first. No? Okay. I'll go. It's quick. So I'm still trying to understand the rear yard. So a general mixed use center rear yard zoning is 0 setback, correct? If it's not the subzone. So the reason this would be.
Yes, yeah, you're correct. It's no, yeah, the normal MC zone.
Yeah.
Is a zero.
So this is a specific provision of the MC 16. Then.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood where we were. That's it.
Well, that was quick. So when I was trying to look at the plans, which are very hard to read, you're right, with all the cross hatching and stuff on it, does at the front, does the second story come out to the lot line?
It does, yes.
Okay, so then I do have a concern about ice and snow and icicles and stuff when it comes out further. It's not right at the sidewalk though, is it? Is it still 2 meters back, or is it at the sidewalk? Because I couldn't figure that out from the plans.
It's closer to the sidewalk, but it's not over the sidewalk. So I think that, you know, again, that what we're asking for, we're not asking for any relief relating to that front yard of the building. It's consistent with what's permitted in that zone and what will be constructed in many other instances. So in terms of, you know, icicles and those types of concerns, I don't believe that the building represents any more significant risk than any other building, any place in the city would.
Okay, so how far back is it from the sidewalk? I couldn't figure that out from your plans.
The front, the setback between the second and third floor.
How close is the second floor to the sidewalk?
The actual dimension, I don't know off the top of my head. I would have to get back to you on the exact dimension from the sidewalk. From the property line is one thing, but from the sidewalk itself, I don't know exactly what that dimension is.
Okay, and from the property line, how far is it back?
the front part of the front is right at 0, and then another portion is set back about a foot from that. So part of the building is set back a foot, and part of it is right at the property line at the front.
Okay, okay. And does the city know what the setback is there from the sidewalk? Like how far the sidewalk is from the lot line? Because I could not figure that out on your plans at all.
Yeah, I could get you that information, but I don't have it on hand. I would have to take it off of my site plan to see exactly what that dimension is.
Okay. That was
It's not something we would normally dimension.
when I
Cheryl,
was
if it's to scale, it looks like it's about a foot if you look at the site plan, but that might not be the scale.
To the edge of the actual
On the
sidewalk.
sidewalk, there's, your herringbone brick pattern on the site plan. It looks like there's about a foot of that beyond the front of the building, but I don't know if
That sounds about right. It's close. It's definitely close.
Okay, yeah, because I do have a bit of concern about that, but if it meets the bylaw, then just to make sure that whatever building materials you use don't produce issues for the pedestrians on the sidewalk when it's that close, and especially at a second floor, just in terms of freezing rain, icicles, that kind of stuff. So just to be cautious about whatever building materials that you're going to use there. And then the other one is about the rear lot line and the rear setback to 0, because there is then a lot of overlook onto your neighbors. So the staircase appears to be unenclosed. And so there really is a loss of privacy for the neighbors, anyone on the staircase. And then how far are the rear windows set back from the lot line? So they're the other side of the staircase. So what is the distance of the staircase?
The windows are set back about the same as the wall, about just under 3 meters. So that's where we're getting natural light for those bedrooms, because the walls on the west side are at the 0 property line. And so we're not able to provide any windows there. It's not a bylaw issue, it's a building code issue. And then that rear wall, there's, I understand your concern about overlooking, but that rear wall that faces the neighboring property's rear yard has no window openings in it whatsoever. So it's a nice masonry wall. At least it's a pleasant, durable, attractive material. And the rear exit stair does have a privacy screening because each of those apartments will enjoy a small outdoor amenity area. And of course, the people that are using their amenity area are not going to want to be seen by the neighbors either. So we designed it to have a privacy screening so that it would be more private for all parties concerned.
Okay, because you might, privacy on the staircase would also be helpful, not for the people going up and down the stairs, but for the neighbors, so that the people going up and down the stairs aren't looking right into the neighbors' yards.
Okay, it's a fair comment. It's something we can have a look at.
And what kind of privacy screening were you? Is this the wooden slats is what it looked like? Is that what
Yes.
you're talking about?
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
that's correct. So it would more than likely be some kind of an aluminum with a wood grain, because it gives it a bit more of a warm feel, but it is much more desirable from a maintenance standpoint. So it'll be, a product like that, which is very durable, high quality, and then there'll be some spacing between those. And of course, you can space them more closely or further apart, depending on how much privacy you want to provide.
Okay, and you can get opaque panels as well.
Yep.
If you look at the building at 175 Carruthers, it's right beside 12 Sterling, and they could probably almost shake hands across the balconies. So they did put some opaque panels up so that it does provide the privacy, because that staircase and those bedroom windows look right into the neighbor's yard.
Certainly. So then I think there it's a matter of finding the right balance, a right trade-off between privacy and then the loss of natural daylight, so
Yeah,
that,
but if you put up frosted glass or whatever.
yeah,
then
that's
you still
certainly
get the light, but you don't, you provide some privacy. So there are solutions.
of course, yes, I agree. So it's something that I think we can look at. I can look at with the Lance and Lisa, something that we could consider if it would be amenable to them.
Well, I think you have to look at the privacy issue. I think that's hugely important. If you're right at the lot line.
Yes, yeah, I don't disagree with you, Cheryl. I think one important point to make is that if you look at, there's a newly developed building on, I'm trying to remember now which street it's on, but it's within a few buildings of our proposed development. And essentially it has I think it provides the 3-meter setback, but there's also wide balconies across each of those units, which are permitted projections. And those permitted projections overlook the rear yards that they abut, and it's significantly taller, and they have zero privacy screening
You're
provided.
right. And
So
we did ask the owner to put in privacy screening. He refused. It was not caught at site plan. And there have been disputes between the neighbors, and
Okay.
police have been involved. So, you know, as a preventative, you might want to think about this so it doesn't go down the same path as that one went, where police had to get involved.
okay, well, I didn't realize that. Of course, if I'd realized that, and you know, my position would have been different. But I mean, we appreciate your comments, and we will, you know, we want to make these apartments desirable and highly functional for the tenants and for Lance and Lisa. So we appreciate your comments, and we will make every effort to do what we can to respond to them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we agree
welcome.
with you, Cheryl, on that. That's why it is drawn in. The privacy is drawn in on the plan. The final material hasn't been picked, so your feedback on that is great.
But I'm talking about the staircase as
Right,
well.
right.
Yeah, so you've done it on the little whatever on the side, but
Right.
not on the staircase. So please think about that.
Okay, and we appreciate that. And getting back to your very original point, if you want the dimension and the setback of the window, it's 9 foot 6 inches from the lot line, is those windows that you were talking about, which are on the other side of the staircase.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and
My
I think,
turn?
yeah, I was about to ask Linda if you were back, so
Yeah, thank you.
go ahead.
I wonder if you could put up, Paul, the rear elevation or the isometric drawing that show, I think actually the rear elevation is what I need. It's the outdoor amenity space that you spoke of that shows on the plan. I don't, maybe it's not the elevation. Anyway, whatever shows the rear staircase with the decks as you labeled them.
I may not have that in this document, but what I can do, I think, is I don't know if you can see this. Can you see this?
No.
You're not sharing
Share
right
the
now.
screen.
Oh, I see. So maybe I just need to share my screen. There we are. Okay,
Yes.
can you see that now?
Yes.
Yes, but that
Okay.
doesn't, that part doesn't work particularly. I don't know whether.
So you're looking for something about the back. So here we
Yes,
are
well,
here.
Okay, can we go up? Yeah, so each of those little platforms, I would call them platforms, you have labeled as that come off the units, that you've labeled them as deck, but they're part of what I consider, well, I believe, are the secondary exits. In other words, they're a fire escape.
Yes, they are, but they can also, they're also permitted to function as an outdoor amenity area as long as they do not impede their required function under the Ontario Building Code to serve as an exit. So you're correct, but just because they're acting as a second exit does not preclude them from being used as an amenity area.
Are they large enough to serve both functions? And how will you, then I guess this will be up to Lance, you'll have to police it. If people put out too much furniture to and impede the exit requirements, he'll have to tell them to move it.
And Lance would have the authority to do so because he's a fireman. So
yeah,
Well,
I'm quite familiar with fire code and the limit, the requirements.
I guess,
there.
but the fundamental question is: are these large enough to serve as amenity space and act as the fire exit? So I leave that with you. It's partly building code and it's partly a question of functionality.
Yeah,
and
and
it-
absolutely, Linda, and again, that's another thing, and another advantage of us being owners living on site. We will be able to watch that, and we will be able to protect that and make sure that it's never impeded. I mean, the idea is obviously that these landings are bigger than what you would normally find in a typical staircase, and the idea here is it's enough space for somebody to put a barbecue and maybe maybe a deck chair or two or something like that and just set out. People aren't going to be having, a Canada Day party with 20 people out on their deck on this kind of thing. It's just a small space for them to be able to, like I said, have a barbecue or do something like that. But we will definitely be able to control that since we'll be living on site, and we will be able to monitor that as well too.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Paul, for pulling it up on screen too. Linda as well. I did find the elevations in the DevApps package. So if you'd like, I can share that just to leave it on the screen if you'd like to just look at the specifics on that. But I think by the sounds of it, the question was well raised already. I'm just looking over the plans, and I'm sure I've missed this, and it's been brought up in the pre-consults and the other meetings. But where are the bicycles you've mentioned on the site going? Is that going in at the front?
Yeah, so that we have bike parking in 2 spots, again, because it's such a
I
compact
see
site,
now.
it's a
Okay.
challenge. So we're providing the 2 required bike parking out front, which are right approximate to the front entrance. This is in keeping with, I believe, the intention of the city in terms of provision of bike parking. But we're also providing some bike parking at the basement level so that we can provide more generous bike parking in excess of what's required by the zoning bylaw. We only are required to provide 0.5 spaces per dwelling unit. So we only require the 2 spaces, but we also intend to provide additional bike parking in the basement. There's a bike parking room, and we'll be using one of those interesting bike parking structures that permits stacked parking spaces. So we propose to provide an additional 4 parking spaces in the basement in a reasonably compact closet. Like everything on this project, everything is pretty compact. So we've tried to be as creative as possible and make enough room to provide some additional bike parking in the basement.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just hadn't seen where it was in the plans.
Yeah, of course.
For the little ones in the front, but that's great to know. And by the looks of it, so the rooftop terrace is just going to be a terrace and not an apartment. If that's the case, is that also where the HVAC is going, like in mechanical on the top, or am I mistaken? Okay.
No, you're correct. In fact, so the rooftop terrace will be for the exclusive use of the uppermost unit, which will be Lance and Lisa's unit.
Okay.
It was something that there were lots of deliberations and discussions about, making that amenity area available to the entire building. And it was just, it was not desirable for multiple reasons and problematic in order to gain access. So the rooftop amenity area that you see here will be for the exclusive use of Lance and Lisa. And we do have a mechanical room off of the rooftop, which is also for their exclusive use. So it's not a common mechanical room, but again, because the units are so compact, we had to try to be creative about finding extra space to be able to install the mechanical room. And from a bylaw perspective, there's nothing that would impede us from doing so. In fact, like I'd mentioned earlier in the presentation, the proposed building is significantly shorter than what would be permitted within the bylaw. We would be permitted a building that was 2 stories higher than what's proposed here at 20 meters in height. Although again, it would not be functional with, especially if we're meeting the setback requirements, because there is a requirement in the bylaw for a step back from the front yard. Once you get above the 3rd story, there's also a step back there. We're providing more than we need to. But so again, what you would yield as a result of that makes it not tenable to develop the building in a much higher form. So I hope that answers your questions.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I hadn't been able to spot the HVAC on the sides, and obviously when the HVAC goes on the sides or in the rear, we sometimes see issues related to the noise, among other things.
Sure, yeah, this will be fully enclosed, so I hope that helps. It'll help to mitigate a bit more. There will definitely be compressors relating to cooling and so on that will be located outside of the building, which is standard, and they'll be located in ways that are consistent with the requirements of the bylaw.
Great. Oh, awesome. Thank you. I won't take too much of more of the floor, and Cheryl's raised her hand. So Cheryl, if you want to take it from me in that case.
Following up on the question that Steph asked. So the mechanical room is only for the top 2 floors. So where are the other ones going? Because you said they're going to be outside, the compressors. So where are they going?
I think, I mean, we don't have that nailed down 100% at this point. We don't have full mechanical design or working drawings developed, but the likely candidate is going to be this rooftop up here. But again, it's constrained by the distances that the compressor lines are allowed to travel. So more than likely they will be located on this flat portion of the flat roof up here, but that's still to be determined. You know, there's very little room to provide them off of the walls at the rear here. We do have windows with fire shutters, and so we have to provide necessary clearances because that's a building code requirement in order to provide openings within a certain proximity to the property line. But the plan loosely at this point is to provide those compressors on the rooftop, you know, but they'll be extremely quiet. Most of the modern technology for cooling is much, much quieter than it once was. So, you know, I have air source heat pump on my home. Yeah. And if you go outside, you literally cannot hear the fan running when it's running on high speed. You cannot hear it at all.
Yeah, the heat pumps are great, but
yep.
But just air conditioners are very noisy. So
yes, this will be a heat pump. This will be an air source heat pump, likely to do combined heating, cooling, and or we'll have in slab heat as well. So you know, yes, I hear your concerns. If we had a window shaker, for sure, they can definitely be a lot more noisy. That's not the intention, because then they're gonna block some of the valuable natural light that we're able to bring into these apartments. So the intention is to have some kind of a compressor air source heat pump.
Okay.
That the fine details of that are yet to be determined.
We do also have a mechanical room designated in the basement, which should be able to service at least the lower unit and possibly the lower 2 units as well too. So you know, we're going to try and enclose as much as possible from a mechanical standpoint. We do have two areas designated, both on the roof and in the basement. So I think the intrusion, we're going to try and keep it a minimum and really shouldn't have, as Paul's explaining, with the type of heating and cooling we're planning to put in, we shouldn't, I don't anticipate it being an issue.
Okay. And Steph, would Jeff be having a pre-construction meeting on this when it gets to that point?
I think, yeah. And just so Lance and Paul, just so you know, we more or less have pre-construction meetings for almost every single development that goes through anything from site plan up of that. So it's not a specific sort of thing here, but yeah, Cheryl, like at this point, I think most site plans, zoning and above, we're going to have those conditions just to work through those construction schedules, timelines, you know, entry exits for any sort of subcontractors and that kind of thing. Just so you guys are aware, it's not a specific thing to your build, just sort of a specific to anything that isn't proceeding with just as of right zoning.
Perfect. Then I'll hold, you know, we have a builder's code of conduct that we would send you, but we can do that in the pre-construction. Just we've had a lot of construction issues in the community. So this tries to work out problems before they start. Perfect. Thanks.
No problem. Yeah, I think most of these meetings, we try and make the best of, at the very least, raising any sort of preventative issues, but with site plan, obviously, and anything above that, we're looking to get the comments in from the community too. So just a bit different. I see, Jay, if you'd like to go.
Yeah, sure. So I'm wondering, actually, the view that's up now is good. So the building, not your building, but the building that's showing now to the left, which is 79, I think. Their lot runs all the way back to your side, the other side of your, right? So when they developed that building, what is the as of right side yard is 0 for them? Do we know?
Yes, yeah, they I believe that they have the same zoning that we have.
Yeah, it should be. So
so
they can go 0 all the way back to
I,
3 meters from the back, right?
actually, you know what? I will take that back because I was actually taking a look at Geo Ottawa today, and they do have an additional exception on their zoning, and I believe it's a side yard setback, and it might be
1.2 meters, I think.
I think it's 1.2 meters.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
Yeah,
that's what it is.
1.2.
Other than that, it's so they're MC 16, and it's I think it's a designation 1966 or something like that. But it does give them a side yard setback, and they do have the same rear yard setback, the 3 meter setback that,
Right, which
that
will,
we have as well
yeah.
now too.
So
Yeah.
I assume this is more your problem than a community problem, but that would enclose your balcony staircases there almost completely, right?
It would, and believe me, that's that's certainly an issue Paul and I have discussed when looking at this whole thing, and that's you know, hopefully if it ever does come down the road, ever does come down to that, you know, they'll have to either design it as such, or we'll have to live with. I mean, if they were to apply for a 0 yard setback like we are, and we're granted it, it's something we'd have to live with. You know, hopefully if they redesign it, they'll want a little bit of space, you know, in between. But yeah, you're right. It will be our issue to deal with if it were to come to that. Yeah.
Because even at 1.2 meters, they can go up, I think, to 6 stories there.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
essentially right on top of you there. But
Yeah, I have I've been trying to get in contact with that particular owner. I know he put some money into renovating that property. I'm not sure if he has redevelopment on his agenda or on his radar, at least at this point now, but I know he did invest some money into that property.
yeah,
And
as you know, these days, it doesn't matter anymore if the property is newly renovated, everything
Yeah,
gets
you're right.
torn down. So
yeah, you're right.
that's no longer a protection, that only the rundown properties get raised and redeveloped. But yeah, that's it. It's really just a question, not a comment.
Thanks, Jay. I don't see any more questions for now, but I think we'll continue going just for a bit more. And I always like leaving some empty space for anyone to jump in if they feel the need. I'm not seeing any other red flags we'd like to raise that haven't already been raised. I mean, from maybe if we want to return to one of the issues, I would think that, and maybe Nadir can correct me if I'm wrong, or someone else can correct me, but wouldn't the corner site triangles for that carport exiting on the street be sort of a requirement that would help with the sightline issues, or would that is that sort of not applying here? Because usually that's what I've seen for help mitigating that impact, but I could absolutely be wrong. I'm not sure if.
No, that's okay, staff. I can probably chime in a little bit here. So the corner site triangles are typically requested at intersections, right? Where
Okay,
you've
there
got
we
two
go.
public streets that intersect. And so I don't believe that a corner site triangle would be applicable in this particular case.
Okay, then it's a moot point in that case. But it looks like a relatively open sort of portion that they've got there, along with the smaller column. And then I'm assuming the darker gray there, Paul, is the sidewalk / the right of way. So
That's
you've
correct.
you've got that small portion sort of pulling it with, okay, yeah, with the cobble, it's you suddenly see kind of a bit more clearly. Okay. Thank you for that. Actually, that kind of helps with envisioning what what the community associations kind of raised and Wanda's raised for concerns. But I see also that on your part, you've been seeing it. Just thank you for helping visualize that a bit more.
You're welcome. Yeah, I think it's not overly generous, but I believe that there is sufficient clearance to be able to leave the site without risk to the public. I think is with, exercising reasonable care, there's enough clearance here that it should be possible to pull forward and look to see that nobody's coming from the east. From the west is really not as much of an issue because it's very, very open on that side. But from the east, I think there's, again, exercising reasonable caution. It doesn't represent any significant risk to the public.
And regardless, I'm sure you've taken it as one of sort of the one comments that's still remaining, and I'm sure it'll be either talked through to the resolution or to further comments. Whatever it might be, I won't speak for staff or what the future of the process might be, but
sure,
I'm sure you've taken to heart, and we'll continue to keep in mind. I'm sure as we all continue discussing this. I'll give it a sort of another open floor moment. If anyone would like to chime in with final questions. If not, Nadir, you said that before we possibly wrap up, you did get an answer back for those concerns about Bill 109. So maybe now would be a good time while anyone might want to think of any final questions.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm happy to chime in on that. So any applications received before July 1st and deemed complete before July 1st are being processed under the old rules. So the site plan would still apply in this particular case.
Okay. And I'm assuming in that case too, it's proceeding under the same rules of staff will be looking for concurrence from the counselor. It's not going straight into just delegated authority forever and onwards.
That's correct. Yes, we'd be looking for concurrence from the counselor.
Okay, that's excellent to know. As I'm sure maybe everyone here is probably already aware, but as of 4 days ago, unfortunately, there's a bit less sort of weight in that site plans will be fully with staff from now onwards due to some of the changes from Bill 109. But besides that, I'm not seeing any further questions. So I'm happy to start wrapping things up. What I'll point everyone to in the chat, if you'd like to check it out, Nadir has kindly put in his contact information, both number and email. I think, and he can correct me if I'm wrong in this case, but you'd probably prefer to get any comments to your email just to have on record and proceed with. So that's what I would suggest for everyone. I'm sure everyone in this case are very familiar with the process of writing up their comments to the planner on any file at this point. As always, we ask that you write us on any comments. I'm sure we're going to be speaking both with the community association here and Wanda yourself, as I think we've heard that there's still 1 or 2 issues that are going to we're going to be discussing and going forward with. And I'll be raising them with Jeff, and I'm sure we'll all be able to discuss those in the early days of this. But with that said, I'm happy to wrap things up for tonight. Thank you to the applicants and their team, Lance and Paul for making the time to come to this meeting. Thank you to the city staff, Nadir and Evan, who are in attendance, as well as the community association and the neighbors. As I said, we'll have this posted by the end of the week on our YouTube, so you can email us for that, or you can find it by looking up Kitchissippi Ward. But other than that, thank you everybody for coming out tonight. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for the excellent discussion. And I'm sure we'll all be in touch as we move forward with this.
Thank you, Steph.
Thanks, everyone. Pleasure meeting you all.
Yeah, thank you.